Week 13 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I would start this week. The first kicker, Jake Elliott of the Philadelphia Eagles. So after a bad ball game a couple weeks ago on Thursday night versus the Commanders, he redeemed himself and had a nice game on Sunday Night Football last week at the Los Angeles Rams in Week 12. So the last few weeks for Elliott, Week 10 at Dallas, 10. Week 11 versus the Commanders, 5. And Week 12 at the Rams, like I mentioned, 11 fantasy points. So this week in a potential high-scoring game at the Baltimore Ravens, give up the fourth most fantasy points to kickers on the season. As long as Elliott, he's back to being accurate and putting the football through the uprights, the opportunities are going to be there. He's one of the more high-powered offenses, obviously, in all pro football. And he's got a good boot and a good kicker for many seasons for this Philadelphia Eagle team. And obviously, they rewarded him with a contract extension. The next start, Jake Bates of the Detroit Lions. When you're on a high-powered offense and the best team in pro football, in my opinion, with the 10-1 Lions here, who've won now 7 games in a row, opportunities have been there week in and week out. They're putting up points at a high bar as this Detroit Lion team. And Jake Bates, he's had a game-winning field goal and a game-tying field goal a few weeks at Houston. Ever since then, his numbers are taken off. Week 10 at Houston, 12. Week 11 versus Jacksonville, 12. And Week 12 at Indianapolis, 8 fantasy points. So this week, Chicago Bears coming to town. Their defense hasn't stopped anyone over the last month of the season. They've lost 5 in a row with Chicago. And I think Jake Bates' opportunities will be there once again. And this is a division game. Anything can happen in these division type of ball games. But Jake Bates, he's getting the opportunities. And when you're kicking doors at home as well, it's always a plus. So this week versus the Bears, he's a start. Once again, the next kicker, Spencer Schrader of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Spencer Schrader, kicker in the high-power offense. And he's been with this Kansas City Chiefs team a few weeks now. Week 11 at Buffalo, 3 in his debut. And Week 12 at the Panthers, 12 fantasy points. So this week, a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders that can't stop anyone. Give up the third most fantasy points to kickers on the season. I believe Kansas City, they're going to be in the red zone all game long versus Vegas Raider defense, where this defense, like I said, they can't stop anyone. But at times, they have been bend but don't break in the red zone where kickers had to settle for field goals. So Schrader, so far, he's been good filling in for Harrison Butker. He should be the kicker another 2 weeks, I believe, for this Kansas City Chiefs team. And this week, I think the opportunities be there 3 or 4 attempts with some extra points. And definitely a kick I would start. The next start, Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. So this Dolphin team, all of a sudden, they're trying to make that late playoff push, now winning 3 games in a row. And Jason Sanders, he's been a big part of it. And another team with a high-powered offense, opportunities are always going to be there, and that's exactly been the case with Sanders. Week 10 at the Rams, 15. Week 11 versus Vegas, 11. And Week 12 versus the Patriots, 11 fantasy points. So this week in a potential high-scoring ball game, Thanksgiving night at the Green Bay Packers. Even though, the weather's not going to be nice, it's not going to be a good kicker's atmosphere, it's going to be cold out there, I still believe Jason Sanders could overcome that and put points on the board. And like I said, this Dolphin offense, they're high-powered, and they're putting up a lot of points ever since Tua returned to the lineup. They've scored 23 or more points, and including the last 2 weeks, 34 points in each ball game. So this week at Green Bay, I think Jason Sanders is a star once again, and it wouldn't be surprising if he had his 4th double-digit game in a row. And the final kick I look to start, Young-Ho Koo of the Atlanta Falcons. I know Koo's definitely taken steps back this season a little bit, but now coming off a bye week, big home game coming up versus the Los Angeles Chargers, where they've been but don't break defense for the most part this season, even though versus good offenses, they've had trouble, no doubt about it. But Young-Ho Koo, he's been a good kicker throughout his NFL career at home. But like I said, I know he's definitely had a down season. It's cool, but I think this week he could bounce back. And this is a must-win ball game for the Falcons after they've been struggling of late, losing the last 2 ball games before their Week 12 bye. So the last few games for Koo, Week 9 versus Dallas, 3, Week 10 in New Orleans, 4. And Week 11 at the Denver Broncos, 9 fantasy points, which was a good bounce-back game. So this week versus the Chargers, I think after the bye week, he's refreshed and he'll get things going once again. He's going to get opportunities. He's a kicker I would start this week. So that's a few kickers I look to start for Week 13 of the fantasy football season.